Hi, my name is Christos Lytras. I'm the managing partner of Hippocampus.io. I'm just taking up the opportunity to introduce myself and tell you a bit about myself, just as an introduction to the 5 slides about the topic investments that we'll be discussing lately in the panel. I've got more than 15 years financial service experience. So I've been working with bankers and financial institutions. And I've been asked here today to give you a little bit of an introduction about what professional investors are looking when they're trying to identify potential technology startup companies in order to invest, okay? So we need to take into consideration that everything around us is changing. People are changing, our needs are changing, the technology that we're using in our daily life is changing. So that means practically that software is probably at the heart as an enabler of whatever is going to happen to us today, but also to the years to come, and definitely for the generations to come. Okay, so we have software in data, we have software in social businesses, we have software on mobile, we have software on the cloud, we have software in cars, autonomous cars, and things like that. So because software is playing such an important role, there is some specific reason why software companies attract professional investors, which practically means that they give to this company money in order to be part, get an equity stake, which means to be a shareholder in the company, okay? Software companies that build software products, they need to spend a lot of money fast to develop a product, to develop a market, and grow big. And usually when you're starting a technology company in a garage, you don't have that type of resources. So basically, if you are a startup that is on the technology field, you probably want to look like a racing car, which is on the left side. So if you are a startup, which by the definition of startup, we're referring to any kind of company which is up to 5 years old, regardless of whether this company is doing a product or a service, and that's the definition of the OECD about what a startup is, okay, not mine. So basically, 4 things, very, very important, that a potential investor would be looking into a technology startup. 1, how big is the market? We heard about tourism, for example, in Lesbos. Is it a big enough market? Is it 100,000 per day? Is it 100 million per day? Is it 1 billion people per day? How do you define the big market? Second thing is whether the technology that is part of the product is embedded inside the product and can develop a moat that can be defended. What does a defendable moat mean? It means that as you grow as a company, your competition cannot keep up with you and cannot actually surpass you. The third most important thing is the people that are going to do the execution. Ambitious founders. And why do you need ambitious founders? Because practically everybody has ideas. I mean, there's no unique ideas across the globe. It's if we just walk out of the room and we come up with 10 ideas and we write them down on a piece of paper, most probably at least 1,500 other people across the globe are thinking on the same ideas. Because we're 8 billion people. What makes the difference between a good idea and a great company? Execution. And execution is not machines, it's not server power, it's not memory power. It's the people. And last but not least, what a professional investor would like to do is invest in your company and disinvest, which means sell his shareholder rights at some point further down in time, with a 10 times profit. Practically, size does matter. So you need to understand whether you're selling a product or a service that is in a market in the hundreds of people, thousands, or billions of people, okay? The bigger the size, the better it is. How to achieve entering a market, or how to be able to achieve a big percentage of this market, that is a second or a third question. But the first question would be, how big is the market? So for example, if with your Lesvos app, you're targeting incoming Chinese, Japanese, and Korean tourism, and you actually have the recommendations that the Chinese tour operator gives to his Chinese incoming tourists in Lesvos, and then you replicate that and you sell it for Mykonos, and then you replicate it and you sell it for Santorini, and then for Creta, you have something good. But guess what? Because I know the company that tried exactly to do that thing. You know, guess what happened? One day, the founder of the company, he flew to the US. And he sat down to talk with a group of professional investors. And the people asked him, how many Chinese tourists does the quota allow to come to Greece throughout the year, per year? And he said 250,000 people. That is the top of his market. And the people sitting on the other side of the table said, you know what? In New York alone, we have 25 million per month. Would you like to bring your business over here? He left Athens, he left Greece, and he's building his business right now in New York. Okay? So that's a very, very good example of thinking about size. It does matter. Okay? Now about the defensible mode thing, we're talking basically of being able to create the technology that as the technology evolves in your product, your competition cannot overpass you. So if you look at your strategy as you're entering a market, your first advantage would be I am the first in the market, or I am the fastest in the market, or I have some differentiating factor that can help me achieve a substantial segment inside the market. And then I grow a little bit bigger, and then I can be a bit of a monopoly or whatever else. But then I need to have specific characteristics in the product that will not allow my competition to reach me and overpass me. And then I get a network effect. Great. Founder skills. From the very most important thing in deciding to invest in a company and in deciding for a company to work with a professional investor is, can we work together? Can we collaborate together since we are in the same boat together? And taking that into consideration, there are two characteristics which are highlighted, unfortunately sideways. One is passion from the part of the founders, and the second thing is coachability. I know it's impossible to read, I'm sorry about that. Okay, something. Two is passion, and number 10 is coachability, okay? So these are the most important things. People need to be passionate about what they're doing, but they need to be able to understand the inputs or the feedback that they are receiving from other people, whether these other people are their customers, their suppliers, or their investors. And you know why? Because of this. This is a study that was done for roughly about 10 years. So this is a company, it's called CB Insights. They set up in America, and now they're a global company. They cover venture capital investment across industries, across the globe, for the last 25 plus years, if I remember correctly. So they did a study, and they said, we're going to track 1,000 technology companies that got their first money, which is their seed level, and we're going to track them all the way to the 6th round, which is probably an initial public offering or an acquisition, okay? And they started out with 1,027 companies, and from these 1,027 companies to the next round, which is the next round of external financing that I need to continue building the product, the customer, the supply chain, or whatever else, only 400 made it. 489 died. Died, you know, failed, closed, fermé. And if you look at the numbers, as you go from round to round, the successful, quote-unquote, companies diminish in a very fast pace. From like 1,000 in 6 rounds later, you end up with only 9 companies. And basically 9 companies would offer the point number 4, which is a 10 times exit. Based on last year's numbers for all the VC investments globally, it's a study published by the American Venture Capital Association. 5 out of 10 professional investments fail, which means that the investors that put money in them, they lost their money. Okay? 2 to 3 of them, they managed to get their money back, and 1 to 2, depending on the region or the industry sector, they managed to get a return of 5 times the money that they invested. And you also need to remember the other thing. Professional investors are entrepreneurs like yourselves, but they have a different business model. And their business model is they go to passive investors, limited partners, like pension funds, and they ask for their money. And they put their own money out of their own pocket, and they tell their passive investors, we will give you your money plus something back in 10 years' time, based on the selections of companies that we will invest in. So always remember, when you're thinking about your own company and your own business, the professional investor on the other side of the table is also thinking about his own company and his own business, which is to have a portfolio of investments that will probably, half of them will fail, and maybe 1 out of 10 will bring him 5 times the money he invested in the company in order to be able to pay back his limited partners and live. So keep calm and dream of unicorns. Thank you very much.